Something I've been kind of waiting, but dreading to see. All right. Per at 247 Huskers on Twitter, breaking, a search firm called Coach Rhule to ask about DC Tony White. Coach Rhule wants Tony White to take a good job and not just any job. Here's what I'm going to tell you. We got to do everything we can to keep that man here. And he's going to be highly sought after, and rightfully so, and he's probably going to get some good offers. I'll tell you what, I have no issues with making that man the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country if we need to. Because don't tell me we ain't got the money. All right. How many fired coaches are we paying bukus of dollars to? How about we pay bukus of dollars to a guy who can actually help us right here, right now? So that didn't throw my lunch hour right there, but can't be shocked or surprised in any way, shape, or form now that it's just official. Kind of figured it was already going on. So let's do everything we can to keep that man here. All right. Let's get to some of the other things that Matt Rhule had to say during his press conference today. All right, Matt Rhule says that defensive lineman Roquan Buckley will be moving to the offensive line in the future as a guard. All right, obviously we need some help on the offensive line. That's a dude that's got some potential. He's got some talent and ability. Okay, if they feel they can help, he can help us on the offensive line. I got no problem with that. I watched a guy named Jared Hellman. He's actually just went into the Missouri High School Sports Hall of Fame. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Missouri as a defensive lineman. He switched over halfway through his career in Nebraska, and he started at guard for 2 years for the University of Nebraska. So sometimes switching over can be a good thing. It can be better for you. It can be better for the team. All right, Rhule said, and I quote, "I couldn't be happier with where we are. I couldn't be angrier about our record." End quote. I agree with the second part of that. The first part I understand. It's not, well, first of all, even if he wasn't happy, he's not going to come out and be like, well, we absolutely suck. We've done a horrible job. He's not going to do any of that. Okay, it wouldn't make any sense. Now, I couldn't be happier with where we are. There's some things I'm happy about. I'm happy about where the defense is. We are emphasizing running the ball. We are tackling well. We are stopping the run well. We are improved in certain areas. Pass protection, still not great. It's been better as of late than it was early on in the year when it didn't exist. Okay, we've got some tight ends that are willing to block. We have talent at wide receiver due to a lot of injuries, not a lot of experience other than Billy Kemp. Okay, special teams got to improve. So I agree with part of that. I'm definitely angry about where the record is because there's easily 2, 3, 4 games that we could have won. I know, coulda, shoulda, woulda. All right. Rhule on the transfer portal opening up next week. He said, and I quote, I bet most guys will want to stay here. End quote. I kind of get that feeling too. You're always going to have people who come and go. I will never forget, I interviewed former Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year team captain and my former teammate Zach Taylor 2 years ago, okay, as they were getting ready to play in that Super Bowl. I believe it was versus the Rams that year. And I asked him, I said, how did you turn around the Bengals? Because they had the number 1 pick his first year as a coach, which means they were, win-loss record-wise, you are what your record says you are. They were the worst team in the NFL. All of a sudden, they're going to the Super Bowl, which in theory means you're one of the 2 best teams in the NFL. How'd you do that? He said, I found my core group of players. He said, you're always going to have people who come and go, but you got to have those core group of guys that you can build around and are going to be there and are going to shed blood, sweat, and tears together and are willing to go through the building process of building something great. And I think that's kind of what Rhule's alluding to when he thinks most people are going to stay. Obviously, some people come and go. That's just part of the gig. But if you got a core group of people, much like Zach Taylor said, I think that's kind of what Rhule's alluding to about there being a core group of people that you can build the program around. And maybe that's what he kind of means as well when he says he's happy. Couldn't be happier. I think that's where he lost me with that statement. Couldn't be happier with where we are. Well, I could be happier. Okay. Am I happy with where we are? That's more debatable. I think the happier, no, I'm not. I could absolutely be happier because I'm not the happiest. But am I happy? That's where you could debate a little bit more. I'm happy with some things that have been improved. Obviously, some necessary improvements still in front of us. Year 1, I get all that. Okay, so I think what he's saying there with saying that a lot of people aren't going to want to leave, we got a core group of players we can build around. All right, speaking about Nebraska's offseason strategy, I love this one, by the way. Head coach Matt Rhule says, and I quote, we're going to build the base with a homegrown roster. And the transfer portal will be used to supplement the roster. End quote. So I've talked about for years. And there have been people who have disagreed with me, and that's fine. You're allowed to be wrong. It's all good. I'm wrong a lot. Just ask my wife. And she's always right, by the way. I've been married for 17 years. Ask me how. All right. So I've said for years, you always want to start recruiting wise before the transfer portal even existed in this great state of Nebraska. Is there talent elsewhere? Yes. Are there more talented places as an overall whole? Yes. The other 49 states have way more population than the one state of Nebraska. It's not beyond my comprehension here. But here's what I know. And it would help if Nebraska starts winning more often so kids grow up wanting to play at Nebraska. I don't know that that's as prominent as it once used to be, and it's frankly not. But when you start with people who have grown up watching a program, and if their dream was to play at Nebraska, and they're close to home, like a lot of people transfer because they go halfway across the country and they get homesick, or they go halfway across the country, oh, it's really hard here. It'd be easier to go home. Well, first of all, if you're home, and this is what the program you've grown up watching, the program you want to play for since you were a kid, it's going to mean more. You're going to work harder. You're going to practice harder. You're going to lift longer. You're going to watch more film. You're going to give it more. You're going to stick it out longer. Okay. The transfer portal is phenomenal when you can bring players in. When it kills you is when players leave. So you want those players who are going to be more dedicated. The Nebraska kids, it's going to mean more to them. It's going to be easier for them to stay than it is to go elsewhere. Unlike, and again, I grew up in the state of Washington, but I also grew up a Nebraska fan because I was born in Hastings. My dad was born and raised in a small family farm in Giltner, if you ever heard of that. How you drive through, there's like one stop sign, you blink, you miss it. So, but I grew up with Nebraska literally in my blood. And I think it was even more so for me because I grew up halfway across the country and there was no other Nebraska fans in my school. Nobody wanted to talk Nebraska football with me, which is part of why I think I enjoy doing these shows. But my point is, when it means more to you, you're going to put more in and you're less likely to hit to go somewhere else, to hit the road if things get challenging. But if that's not the case, you might not put as much in. You might not be willing to stick around. You might hit the road a little bit quicker. You're going to get more out of those people, and then it creates a culture in the locker room of that. Okay, so I'll just be honest. My son's on a national tackle football team. We're going to go down to Florida first week of December. We're going to play teams from all over Florida, Texas, Washington. So during the regular season, it wasn't necessarily a national team. There was players within that team that had committed to go to Florida. There was players that hadn't. I'll be honest with you. The culture on his team sucked throughout the year. It was lazy. It was entitled. It was whiny parents. I wasn't a head coach, so I just put my head down. I called the plays. I ran the offense, and I was just like, you know what? There's too many people who want to complain rather than work, and I don't have time for this. What was interesting is those people who weren't committed to going to Florida, instantly our practices were much more intense, much harder, going much faster. I went home after that first night, and I said, this is the most fun I've had all year. And then, so that was about 2 weeks ago. And I started asking the kids, I'm like, what's your favorite part of the season? The kids who were still on the team. And they said, oh, the past 2 weeks of practice. I said, wait a minute, practice? Not the games. Not winning the state championship game. Not winning and beating the team from Texas in the regional championship. It's the last 2 weeks of practice. They're like, yeah, it's been way more fun, way more intense, way more physical. I love it. And they kind of look at me and they go, it was okay up until then. That's the culture of having the right guys in the locker room. Okay, there's no per se locker room for this 8th grade team. But you get my point. In college, it reverberates throughout the locker room, the type of mentality and attitude, okay, that you have. Anyways, I spent way too much time on that particular thought, but there it is. It's something that I've seen play out a million times. I've seen guys in the Nebraska locker room when I played there, they had the entitled attitude, and they didn't work hard, and they whined, and they complained, and they were gone. And then you had the other people who were there 3, 4, 5 years because it meant something to them, and they were willing to put in that time. All right, 2 more quick thoughts. I hear the music playing. Huskers will have 24 players walk on senior day. Matt Rhule said he pointed out to some guys may walk, but have not yet made up their minds. Hey, if you haven't made up your mind, walk and make sure you get that in. I love having as many people walk on senior day as possible. Okay, Matt Rhule said a search firm. Oh, I already talked about that. Okay, about the search firm. I love senior day because it gives guys opportunities who have busted their butt for years, okay, to be recognized in a stadium that they help contribute to a football program. And obviously, if you've played for years, it's awesome for you too. But that was always my favorite part of senior day.